or is that new?
That's the other part, right? Yeah.
Were you doing like a Santa Claus at Christmas and you just haven't shaved it off yet, or you? Okay. To keep it. It looks distinguished.
I didn't realize the baby Jesus had a beard.
We're live, I know, I can hear you. It looks very distinguished.
I redo it all quickly. I mean, but if he doesn't get it done,
There you go.
I gave him
Synonymous.
that last week, and I gave himself he's available every day. If he can't do it by that day, we're off. We're going to Europe in 2 weeks. So floating on the Nile. My wife has finally convinced me. That's like a bucket list trip for her that she's wanting to do forever. So. This one is.
There we go.
All right. All right, we all set? All right, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. If you all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good afternoon, everybody. First item is the approval of the minutes, and I am going to only today ask for approval of the minutes of the January 8th meeting. We all got the minutes to our planning retreat, but it's a long document. It's actually a long 2 documents. It's a very tough meeting to try to write minutes on, so I'd like, certainly from my perspective, I'd like some more time to take a look at that one. But do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the Town Council meeting of January 8th, 2019?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Anybody have any changes, comments? All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Okay, they're approved. Mayor's update. I just have a couple things. At the last January meeting, I did announce or indicate a few of the council chairman positions which we approved and a couple of the liaison roles. I've just got a couple more that I want to make everybody aware of. Councilman Wyduck is going to be the liaison to the Kiawah Island Conservancy. Councilman Prickett is going to be the liaison for the planning area, which includes just planning overall, but also as needed or as appropriate liaison with the Planning Commission and the BZA. And Councilman Connolly is going to take on an area of responsibility around roads. And for those of you who may not be aware, the town, Kika, the community has been focused on the issue of Johns Island roads, particularly improving the quality and safety of roads across Johns Island for a lot of years. We have always in the town had somebody who has taken on a special responsibility for at least paying attention to the developments that are taking place in the county, the state, and other places, and trying to move those issues along. Most recently, the last probably 4 years, John Wilson had that as his role. I actually am optimistic that there are going to be some things this year that actually do start, some conversations that do start with respect to roads. So Marianne is going to take that responsibility on. The only other thing I wanted to point out is when you came across the bridge, you'll see that the bridge project is finally done. It has now been cleaned up. The porta-john is gone, for anybody that was concerned about that. And the last landscaping is just starting to go into that project. And you know, I know it's for a few people in the community, they wondered why that project was taking so long. And the fact is, it was it was a very complicated project. What was occurring, a wall was being built, a long wall, and that wall was being built down at the beginning at water level. Well, as a result of that, the only time you could really work was around the tides. So there would be some days that you could only have a contractor come in and work 3 or 4 hours. There were some days you couldn't work at all because low tide might be, at 6 o'clock in the morning. So it was a very time-consuming, a very difficult project, but it is done. If we had not done that, there were severe potential problems with the road leading up to the bridge. So that project is finally finished. That's the only thing that I've got. Citizens' comments. Do we have anybody who has comments on items that are on today's agenda? Wendy?
Wendy Kulik, 38 Marsh Edge Lane. I have a question rather than a comment, and that was, when were the openings on the BZA and the Planning Commission advertised to residents of the island? And if they weren't, why not? Thank you.
Okay.
We did the planning commission.
We actually did both, and we did those, we put them in our town notes and online when we first had the openings. So that would have been several months ago.
It was in the fall. It was
Yeah.
the last council did,
I think, yeah.
Morris Hannon, for instance, on BCA.
Charlie just resigned.
We took the existing applications for the people that had applied for our positions and used that applicant pile.
Any other,
Good afternoon.
Judge?
Dennis McGill, 100 Pleasant Valley Drive. Just in reference to the minutes from the last meeting, and I guess it was in regular meeting in January. I had indicated in the first citizen comment session that I had given a FOIA request to Ms. Tillerson, and there's detail on the amount of money and the persons that were the recipients of the money that was allowed to be given to her by her to deserving employees. The comment sheet came to me in answer to my FOIA request was that there's no written record of that, and all she could tell me was there was $500 given out, whether that was 4 awards of $125 each, 5 awards of $100, or 10 awards of $50. She refused to detail. I made a second request on it, and of course, prior to the meeting, I had also referred to the ordinance that talked about questions being given to council and answers being supplied over and above where the FOIA documents were available, and that was one of my questions which never was replied to. And in that comment, I said no written documentation was required for what I felt, and of course you, Mayor, as the person that offered that particular $5,000 as extra remuneration. Well, remuneration is either wages, salary, some extra compensation, and it seems to me that any extra compensation should be part of a record that the council keeps, and it should be available on a FOIA request. And of course, my last comment was to ask the attorney, the town attorney, to review that request and come up with an answer if I was right on that information being supplied. That's the first comment on the minutes. The last comment was just a correction. As I did in the second part of the citizens' comments, I suggested that the attorney be given an opportunity to make a report pending litigation, and I felt you were doing it under executive meeting or session, and I didn't think necessarily every comment or any question asked of counsel was necessarily privileged. And in fact, I had indicated in the last paragraph what I had said is the executive session is not necessarily privileged, and what it said here was do have to be discussed in executive session. What I meant to say is did not have to be discussed in executive session. That's what I said at that meeting. Wasn't included that way in the minutes. I don't know if there's any response from council or from the mayor in reference to the request I made about the deserving employees and the monies that were given out, whether that should be made public record.
I'll follow up with the town attorney after this meeting, and he and I will discuss it. Okay, all right. Any other citizens' comments? All right, with that, we'll turn to old business, and we have one item, which is the approval on second reading of ordinance 2019-1, which is an ordinance to amend Article 16, Beach Management, Chapter 1, Beach Lighting. This was reviewed by town council at our January meeting and approved by council at the first reading. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any additional conversation?
Done by me.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, that ordinance 2019-1 is approved. With that, I'll turn to new business, and I'm going to try to take these as some combination of items. The first item A are committee appointments to four committees, and what we have here are, first of all, the Board of Zoning Appeals. We have 2 reappointments and 1 new appointment. The 2 reappointments are Ron Hacker and Scott Parker, who are currently on the committee. They would be recommended for full terms. These are 3-year terms, so that will take both of them out until the end of January of 2022. And then we have the appointment of Frank Cassidy, which is to a new appointment to fill the remaining term of Charlie Larson, who recently resigned. So that appointment would only be through the end of Charlie's term, which would take that to 1/31/2020. We second have 1 appointment to the Planning Commission. This is the appointment of John Moffett. I think John's here. Wave your hand. How you doing? And this is also a midterm replacement. This is a replacement for the position that was held by Dan Prickett. So this is finishing his term. It is effective to the end of January 2020. And I do want to clarify, because there'll be some questions since we have a planning commission meeting tomorrow. This appointment does take effect immediately.
Yes.
But my understanding is that, as I think most people would understand, that since John has not been a part of the planning commission or any of the conversations to this date on the Kiawah Partners replatting request, my expectation or understanding is that John is probably not going to participate in the conversation tomorrow or probably vote, but he is otherwise effectively a member of the committee, and that ultimately is up to the committee chair, Fred Peterson's discretion, but that's my understanding. In the case of the Public Works Committee, that committee, all of the members are reappointed after a 1-year. Those terms expired on January 1. We did not handle that in January because we were looking at some of the membership and some of the some considerations of the committee, but I am recommending the reappointment of all of the existing members of that committee. So Dave DiStefano, James Gillum, Warren Standard, Steve Sager, and Will Connor would be reappointed to the committee. We are not at this point recommending anybody to chair the committee. Currently, Dave DiStefano chairs it. Dave is currently running for the Kika board, and he and I have had a conversation, and depending on the outcome of that, we may handle the chairmanship of that committee differently. And finally, the State Accommodations Tax Committee, that is also a committee that is created for a one-year term. And we are recommending that 4 of the existing members be reappointed. That would be Dan Hubbard, who has been acting as the chair, Bill Lazard, who represents the arts function, Roger Warren, who represents the hospitality industry, Pam Harrington, who represents the hospitality industry. And she is on there, by the way, not because of her realtor involvement, but because of the property management involvement that Harrington Exclusives has. And then I'm recommending 3 new individuals, Diana Mezzanotti, Rachel Moore, and Don Semler. And that will take us to the 7 members, which is what is defined by state law. Unless any council member would like to have the vote on any of those split out separately, I would otherwise just ask for a motion to approve the 2019 committee appointments to the Board of Zoning Appeals, Planning Commission, Public Works Committee, and State ATAX Committee as recommended.
I so moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion, conversation?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, very good, thank you. I have another reappointment. We are recommending to reappoint Judge Strauh to a 2-year term. For those of you who are new to the council, may not be familiar with Judge Strauh. Judge Strauh has been our municipal judge since 2013 when he was first appointed. He is at the end of this month completing a 3-year term. He has indicated his willingness and interest to continue for an additional term. We have the latitude under our ordinance and I believe under state law as well, is that correct? We have the latitude to have anywhere between a 2 and a 4-year term.
Yeah.
In this case, I am recommending, even though he's coming off a 3-year term, I'm recommending a 2-year term, which would take his term through the end of March 2021. And the rationale of that is twofold. One, it allows a new council and new mayor 2 years out to be able to have the latitude to consider that appointment and that role and how they'd like to go forward with it. And also it gives the judge a little bit more latitude in terms of his own decisions of how many more years he'd like to be in that role. I strongly support this. The judge, I think, has performed his role very well during those last 5 years. I think we'd like the continuity that he would provide to the municipal court for a couple more years. So if I could have a motion to approve Judge John Strauh for a 2-year appointment as municipal court judge.
Moved. So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any conversation?
He's a great appointment. I think he does a wonderful job.
No concerns at all.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And then we have 4 spending requests, and again, I'm going to try to take those as a single package also. At the last Ways and Means Committee, we considered 4 contracts. The first was the renewal of our off-duty deputy agreement with the Charleston County Sheriff's. This was the agreement that covers what is now our evening and early morning shift. That was discussed at Ways and Means and recommended for approval. We also, at the Ways and Means Committee, considered and recommended for approval renewal of our agreement with Medicare for air medical transport services. We considered and recommended for approval a contract for our HVAC equipment maintenance with Triad Mechanical. And we considered and recommended for approval a contract amendment to Island Beach Services for the additional expenses that were considered and occurred earlier last year as a result of them acquiring additional facilities on island. Again, unless there is any one of these items that a council member would like to have separated out for a vote, I would ask for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Items D, C, D, E, and F.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. We're moving right along. And the last item we have is a discussion of the Kiawah Island utility rate increase. And on this item, I'm looking for some input and discussion from town council, the council members, as to the next steps forward that we might want to take with respect to this issue. As a reminder, Kiawah Island Utility has requested to the Public Services Commission a increase in their rates. Their initial recommendation was for a rate increase to both water and sewer that resulted in about a 9.96% increase to rates. If you recall, we both the prior council and this one discussed whether we wanted to be an intervener in the case, which we chose to file and be. And we also had considered what position we wanted to take with respect to hiring additional legal counsel or additional consulting support. And the decision that we had made at the time was we were going to wait until the ORS, which is essentially the staff group that supports the Public Service Commission. We were going to wait until the ORS did their initial analysis and made their initial recommendations and decide at that time what further direction we might want to go. The ORS has done that, and they have recommended what seems to amount to a 5.18% increase in water rates and 5.42% increase in sewer rates. While the full documentation we can provide you is also for anybody out in the audience is on the state website, they get to that through two major avenues. One is a number of adjustments that the ORS has recommended to the actual finances of the water company. So as they go through and look at the water company's pro forma for the base year, they will look at various things like how much overhead is being, charged from the parent company down to the local company or any number of things. There were probably about 27 or 28 adjustments that were recommended by ORS that resulted in a reduction in the rate. The second thing, Kiawah Island Utility was looking for a 14.5% rate of return, and the ORS is recommending a 14% rate of return. So when you put those, 14,
Which is their current rate, is that correct?
which is their current rate, right? So when you put all of that analysis together, according to the ORS's calculations, that brings that down from almost 10% to closer to 5.5%. As a result of that, my recommendation, and this is what I'd like to hear some discussion and feedback, is that we would not at this point, we would not go out and seek any additional legal advice or any additional consulting support. From my perspective, when I look at the adjustments that they've made, when I look at the size of the reduction that the ORS is recommending, I can't imagine any amount of outside legal advice we would get or additional analysis that would have any substantial impact on that reduction. So from my perspective, I don't think it would be spending money wisely. I don't think we would get much benefit out of doing that. What I do recommend, though, is that I would suggest that the town, since we have filed as an intervener, that we do in fact go on record in support of the ORS position. My understanding is that Kiawah Island Utility is essentially in agreement with all of the line item adjustments, but Kiawah Island Utility is not in agreement with respect to the rate of return. So my recommendation would be that we go on record as supporting the ORS on both matters. But I need some direction, and I'd like to hear some thoughts from the rest of the council members.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's a relatively easy decision to spend legal funds to try to get this number a little below 5.5. I just don't think it's worth it. So I would support that recommendation.
I agree.
Yeah, I think the ORS has been surprisingly thorough. They know what they're doing. They're used to doing this. They've really got at any weakness there might have been in the plan and brought it down to a reasonable level. I think any expenditure on our part would sort of not go anywhere.
I also agree with the recommendation. Excuse me. One of the concerns I had was what are they doing to bring their costs down? And it seems that has been addressed, so I will support this.
Okay. So what we would do, I think we've got Dwayne till March sometime, but I think we would probably go ahead and write it and send it off pretty quick, and it would just again indicate our support. There is one other item too that I know Councilman Wydock has been involved in conversations on this. I don't know if anybody else has, but there is a side issue that's been at play here. The utility for, I guess, almost since its inception,
Going back 20-some years?
yeah, has charged the St. John's Fire District it's called a hydrant fee, although now that people have gotten into it where I think they're renaming it a fire suppression fee, but regardless, they have been charging the fire district a fee of about $140 per hydrant. And the fire district has approached the town starting last year, concerned about and wanting us to support a change in that practice. And as a result of the rate request, the fire district also made a request to actually have this fee taken out of the rate. Taken out
To
of
put into the rate.
Well, to be put into the rate and charged directly to rate holders, and taken out of their payment to the fire district. Essentially say, don't charge it, don't charge the money to the fire district, just charge it directly to rate holders. The ORS has indicated that they're essentially ambivalent on the issue. They don't really have a dog in that hunt. And so the fire district has been back wanting us to take a position. The position so far that we've taken with them is that if this were only Kiawah Island, and there was not a St. John's Water District involved who has similarly, let me back up, St. John's also charges a fire hydrant fee to the St. John's Fire District, and Seabrook's Water District also charges a fire hydrant fee. So St. John's the fire district has wanted all three of them to stop. In a perfect world, you could argue that actually having it in the rate is probably the better way of doing it. But the position we've taken is that so long as the other two water districts are not willing to change their practice, there is no willingness on the part of Kiawah to change ours. Otherwise, what would be happening is KIU would be charging our customers for Kiawah fire hydrants, and at the same time, our taxpayers would still be paying for St. John's and Seabrooks in their tax to the utility. I don't know whether anybody has any opinion on that, wants us to look at it differently.
But I think we have said if all three can get together at the same time, we would certainly be part of that solution.
I've told Chief Walls that if she can get Seabrook and St. John's to sit down and agree that at some point in the future, all three utilities would change their practice, then I think we would probably agree to that. So at the moment, that's the view we've taken. I don't know if anybody has a different view on it. Otherwise, absent that, then we'll go ahead and prepare a response to RS. Okay. I have nothing else, so town administrator report.
Yes, I just have a few things I just wanted to comment on, bring to everyone's attention. One is in regards to 122 Turnberry. That's where we had removed a home, we demolished a home. I want to let everyone know that project's complete. We have the company we hired, I think, did a great job in removing the home. They graded the property. Right now, we're now at the point of just doing some very minimal landscaping. Worked with Kika, and so we're going to move forward with that project and hopefully have that completed within the next couple of weeks. I'm also working with Mr. Green in terms of the lien. He has drafted a copy of that lien. We're going to be looking at lien about exactly $55,254.02. It's what we're going to end up filing on a lien. And what happens is that when that property is sold, the lien is then taken care of at that time. So it could be 50 years, 30 years, 5 years, just whenever Dr. Silvers.
The lien never expires. We don't have to renew it every so often.
No.
It's in perpetuity.
It's in perpetuity until the property is sold, and then that lien pops up when they do their lien, their search. Then that will pop up, and then that's when the town will receive its full cost.
And we have an absolute understanding now between us and, since I see the community association here, that our responsibility with this property now is done.
Once we do the
And-
landscaping, and that they would take over and do the
And
watering and
ongoing
everything.
maintenance, minimal maintenance to
Mhm.
make sure it doesn't sort of backtrack and look that Kika is taking that.
Yes, sir.
The record shows he's nodding.
He's nodding. We have a camera, so in this room nodding is recorded, so yeah.
Yes, so thank you. So just want to let everyone know that that project is for the most part complete, and I've heard from the neighbors, and you may want to comment. I think they're very,
They're thrilled.
they're thrilled.
Yeah, it looks
So,
good.
It looks good. The next thing I just want to bring everyone's attention is in regards to FEMA, and Dorota gave me some good news yesterday. But with regards to our cleanup with Irma, our total cost was about $254,000. So far to date, and we should get some more money, but we've received $102,440 of that reimbursed from FEMA.
Mhm.
So we should get I expect some more money to come in, so that is great news. We got approved, I think, out of this 254, about 75% of that we should be reimbursed back from FEMA on that. So we are working through that process.
This is all Irma.
Mm-hmm.
Have we ever, where are we with Matthew? Did we?
Which one was Matt?
Last-
The first one. We were close to Matthew, Michael, Irma.
That was the one where we sort of, FEMA changed their
Right.
explanation of the rules after the fact. Are we still,
No, we're
we're
is-
done?
We're done with that,
Okay.
yeah. We appealed that and we lost the
Yeah, we
appeal.
lost it, that's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah. And last, I would like to introduce, we have one of our two permanent full-time deputies, Deputy Junkin, who's looking around. If you can please stand up. Just want to introduce him and let the community put a name with the face. They officially started March 1st. And we have the two full-time, and by the end of June, we should receive our remaining two. But we are happy to have you here. He has his name badge on, and if you'd like to say anything or just welcome.
No, appreciate it. Hopefully I speak loud enough for everybody. The detail for the permanent deputies did start March 1st. So when I'm working my days, the other deputy's off. And then when I'm off, he's working. And that's just from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. And then as the mayor mentioned earlier in the notes, the off-duty detail, there will be two deputies that come in at 4 p.m. and work till midnight, and then two deputies come in at midnight till 8. So there's a slight overlap in the morning and the afternoons. I guess the high peak time, so to speak, and that's going to assist with traffic and everything else that's going on the island as more people continue to find the goal here on the island. So, and then hopefully by June, 2 more daytime deputies will be on, so there will be 2 of us during the day from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. And then our sergeant, who is Sergeant Ed Simlich, he will transfer over to this detail permanently, and I believe his schedule is going to be Monday through Friday, or fluctuate whereas it's needed. So at any rate, I'm sure between the sheriff's office and the mayor's office, our contact information should be pushed out through the town notes or whatnot. If you guys have any questions, concerns, complaints, if the folks at the town can't handle it or are unsure of it, please resort to us. We will try to mitigate and come up with a plan for a resolution.
Thank you. And the other deputy is Deputy Cotton. No, Jen.
James Comfort.
Comfort. I knew it was some drink. I couldn't think of it. Sorry. Thank you.
Are you okay, ma'am?
Yeah.
Stephanie, or
You put
deputy,
your finger on your nose and,
between now and the end of June, is the first shift, the day shift, being supplemented with an additional off-duty deputy? Because otherwise, we have just one of you on the island.
That is correct, sir. It's just one deputy from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m.
But are we supplementing that with an off-duty deputy between now and end of June through Captain Martin?
To my knowledge.
No, not that I'm aware.
We should probably talk
Yeah.
about that.
Now,
We have, go ahead, we have that overlap that we have,
We
and
do,
we did
but-
talk with the chief deputy in regards to, they were going to do some backfilling, but in regards to being able to get to during the day, we'll have to talk about that.
Yeah, we should talk about that.
and I do know that it's been brought up as we move along towards June. The island's going to get busier and busier on the weekends. So from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m., or from 8 until 4, that 8-hour period or so, it's me. So I handle everything from Freshfields and all of Kiawah. So if there's multiple calls, then it's just going to be a prioritize the calls and get them as they come. If it's something of urgency, then we will pull from the road. So if there's we're not, just so everybody's clear, we're not gonna just abandon calls just because, it's just one person. We're gonna make sure that the calls are answered in a timely fashion and in accordance with priority. But I think they're gonna look at as well, maybe on the weekends, beef up, just instead of just having one deputy on the weekend from 7 to 7, maybe beef up, as you said, Mrs. White, to have another deputy supplement during the day, just so that, due to the fact of the increase in persons and traffic. But whatever you folks need or request, I can promise you and rest assured, we will do everything in our power to ensure that their services are provided and all the resources that come along with it.
Great. Well, welcome. We're
Thank you.
glad to have you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Stephanie, anything else?
No, I didn't do it.
All right, council members, if anything, Klaus? Chris?
I have nothing.
Dan?
I'll mention just a couple of things. I've had a chance over the last several weeks to work with the Arts Council in their deliberations on planning for the next calendar year of events and so on. And I've been very pleased with the amount of knowledge, the amount of time spent by the people, their understanding of how the arts community works, and booking agents and non-booking agents, and what venues change and what are going to be available because of changes. For example, at the resort, we're going to, in the long term, give up East Beach because it'll eventually be used for the PGA and then probably torn down. But the council is doing a great job. I was really impressed by the knowledge and the wisdom and the experience of the people in the council. So my hat's off to them. It's a pleasure to work in support of them.
And we've often said, I mean, that group has a lot of very specific knowledge that if they were not there, I don't know how we'd put those programs on. We wouldn't, so.
We'd have
Yeah.
trouble.
Mary Ann, anything?
Nothing.
Okay. Dwayne, do you have anything? Okay. With that, citizens' comments?
Marilyn Larrick, 1082 Terrapin Court. I have a question and then a comment. My question is, what's happening with the Beachwalker Road project with the extra lane? Is that now going to be held off until after the beach season, or is it going ahead?
That is moving forward. The work is being done right now with respect to working with contractors, and we still have a target of, and correct me if I'm wrong, but our target is to have that done before Memorial Day. Is that correct? Now, I do know that the Park District is running behind on their project. I don't know, I think if you know what the current date is.
Right now, they're anticipating May 1.
May 1, so they're a month or so behind. But we are still working on the basis
Okay.
that that project's gonna be done by Memorial Day.
And just as a point of information, did Kiawah Development Partners eventually end up donating any land to this project?
We ultimately worked around it. They were ready and willing to, but we ended up with a sort of a movement of there was enough right of way that we ended up with a movement of the path and road that didn't require that.
And I assume that's going to be moving towards the marsh?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But not anything that impacts DHEC or other approvals, right?
Right, just some trees?
No.
I think we protected the trees.
No trees?
No
No
trees,
trees or
no.
Hey, just grasses, good,
Not from the town's project.
No, we protected
There
the
may be
trees.
something from the
excellent.
college project.
Thank you for that information. My, the other issue is, of course, tomorrow's Planning Commission meeting, once again, to consider accepting KDP's plat to open up Duneside Road to most of the traffic from Beachwalker East. And I just wanted to point out that we in the community strongly feel that the towns, even though we're dealing with roads that are Kika's roads, that there are also public safety issues that are still the town's to consider and the town's liability to have. And things like speed limits and how one deals with curves on Duneside Road, et cetera, are really public safety issues. Thank you very much for your consideration.
And Marilyn, I do want, and obviously I need to be careful with my conversations because the Planning Commission is in fact a separate entity from the Town Council, and they've got authorities that are separate from ours. So I need to be careful that I'm not in any way pushing the Planning Commission towards one decision or another. I don't know what they're going to do tomorrow. But at the same time, I have seen, I'm getting hit with a lot of correspondence right now.
Really?
Much of it of which has the origin is your email raising several comments, which I think came from.
It was at the request of the Kiawah Island Cottage
things.
Owners Association.
And I think one of the things that has been difficult through this whole thing is that I do know that both the Community Association and the developers have on numerous occasions engaged various groups with Sparrow Pond and Duneside in conversations in trying to figure out how to resolve some of these issues. And so, you often get into a situation where I get letters from residents who say, this is an issue, a problem, we don't agree, we can't live with this, at the same time that I'm getting different feedback from whether it be HOA presidents or officials with those entities that are saying, well, no, they have been sitting down with us. I'm not going to say they like everything, but they say, okay, we've worked through some of these issues. So it is problematic because
there was exactly one meeting after the February rejection by the Planning Council on February 26th. The meeting date was selected and controlled by KDP. I'm sure its relative proximity to tomorrow's meeting is not a surprise. Yeah. And our representative, at least for the Kiawah Island Cottage Owners Association, our position is that we are 100% against the opening of this road and that it will adversely impact public safety. And unfortunately, I actually personally don't have a dog in this fight in terms of where I live and Duneside Road, other than I'll, no doubt because I'm here all the time, be one of the first responders when there is a serious accident. Thank you.
But I do want to, since the community association's here, because I did respond to you
I saw that.
yeah, and I just want to, because others are using the same letter for the record, want to make clear. And these are good comments, but there are a couple things here that I just need to clarify are not issues, not decisions or items that are within the town's purview. And so because we're dealing with private roads, speed limits inside the gate are the purview of the community association. They establish those. And so, considerations of whether there should be speed limit changes to Duneside are issues that correctly the community association needs to deal with, but it's not something the planning commission can deal with.
I guess my thought was that it was specifically not something. The town did not need to pay for the Kimley Horn traffic study, but they did. But one of the things that was specifically not addressed were such things as speed limits and curves, et cetera. And in there, because the town was generous enough to do that, it wouldn't be difficult for Kimley Horn to extend that to the speed limit. And I have no idea what the Planning Commission is going to decide tomorrow, but if there is a decision that then requires the town council to support the Planning Commission in its decision, I would hope the town council would view that with favor rather than not supporting whatever stance the Planning Commission takes. And of course, there's an executive session tomorrow morning, or no, tomorrow afternoon, on the part of with Mr. Green and the Planning Commission. So I don't know what issues are going to be discussed there.
Okay. All right. Other.
Thank you.
Wendy Kulik, 38 Marsh Edge Lane. I don't know if the contract that the town entered into to create the signs, when you're coming into the municipal complex, contained any sort of warranty period. But I noticed today coming in, I don't know if the signs are, if the paint is peeling or if it's poor construction, but when you have a building that costs what this costs, it looks kind of crummy coming in and seeing those.
It does look crummy, and were you at our Ways and Means Committee last week?
No, I
Oh,
wasn't.
You missed us. So there was a recommendation at Ways and Means to for a contract to go out. Those were temporary signs, and so there was a recommendation to create new permanent directional signs. There were two bidders. One was for $35,000 for 5 signs, and one was for $17,000 for 5 signs. The Ways and Means Committee, in their deliberation, choked on both of those contract proposals, and as a consequence, they recognized that we have a problem, that the signs do need to be repaired or replaced. The 2 contract costs were beyond what we believed was reasonable. And so Rusty Lamio is working with, I believe actually with the Community Association, to look at alternatives, more cost-effective alternatives to those signs. So we agree they look pretty crummy, but we also struggle with $17,000 to fix them.
Remember, you have to pay the Kiawah surcharge.
Whatever, it was a lot of money for a few signs, yeah, so. Yes.
Dennis McGill, 100 Pleasant Valley Drive. Whenever I've come up here to ask some questions it was only because I felt the council should have complete transparency and candor when there are questions asked by the citizens. And of course, one of the things I've often thought is that the attorney for the town at the end of the meeting ought to give us an update on what the status is of each of the complaints that are still outstanding. Visa Rucker and of course the prior auditors. He can do that after I stop speaking. One of the things too, I looked at the Charleston County Sheriff's Office, and after listening to the officer, I was confused before he started talking, because it seemed what the town was paying for in the original contract was the 4 to 12 a.m., 4 p.m. to 12 a.m. for the second shift, 2 deputies, and 12 a.m. to 8 a.m. for 2 deputies on the third shift. There was no indication of payment to the deputies for the 8 to 4 day.
That was a different contract that we approved months ago. It's a separate
Oh,
contract.
so this isn't the complete contract here?
Well, it's a complete contract for that engagement. It is not the contract that relates to the agreement between the town and the sheriff's department for the full-time coverage, which is a different approach, different model, totally different economics.
Okay, so
And
this
with-
isn't a complete picture?
Well,
This document that
no,
was in
I'm
today's...
gonna actually debate words with you because they're important. That is a complete picture of that contract to provide those services. There is a separate contract which provides a complete picture of our approach to and cost for providing policing services during the day. If you would like a copy of that contract, we'll get you one before you're out the door.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that. And because when I was looking at it, I said to myself, well, maybe the daytime shift was going to be handled by code enforcement people that are working for the town. You've answered the question. I'll take a look at that other contract.
All right.
The other reason, and as I opened up saying, you know, I was always interested in transparency and candor. And of course, my last request of a FOIA basically was answered, I believe, by our treasurer. However, it was incomplete in a lot of different ways. And even beyond that, when I compared the answers to what was the town's website alleging transparency, I found out there was a lot of discrepancies between what was being given to me by the treasurer and what was on the town website. As a matter of fact, there was nothing on the town website as far as salaries are concerned that has been changed since the beginning of, I think, last year. And I know that's not the case, if no one else, for Ms. Tillerson. She's obviously got a substantial increase. If you look on the town website, she's still showing her old salary of under $20,000. And of course, all of the others haven't changed either. And from the response I got from the treasurer, and this threw me completely about salary, basically, there was an indication, for instance, most of the salaries that was given for the year, the end of the year, were much lower that she gave me than was on the website. And in fact, the most ridiculous change was for the communications manager. On the website, it shows $67,500, and in her response to me, she shows her getting $58,500.
Well,
What's the transparency there? I don't understand.
Well, we will after this meeting.
Well, I asked to talk.
We will after this meeting do a reconciliation between the current salary levels and the website.
I can, wait just a second, I can easily answer that. Based on his FOIA request, he asked for annual. We provided him the information based on what he asked for, not based on us being in a fiscal year and then our change of salary. So based on his FOIA request, he probably asked, the way that he asked the question, we provided his answer.
Well,
So we-
I'm,
Right, which is January through December, but on our website, we do it based on fiscal year, so the salary did
Is it
change,
different?
but
Is
he
it
asked
different
for annual. That's why it looks like there's a difference.
well,
but
I
it's
don't
not.
think it should have been that different. But anyhow, there was a lot of other discrepancies in the website, so-called transparency as well, a listing of how many, what shall I say, I guess it had to do with the contracts. They only show 14 over 25,000. From my listing at the end of the year, there were over 40 that have over $25,000 as contracts with the town. Talk about check registers, and I've said this since July, that they ought to include not only what checks are made out to the town and employees for expenses, but also what is made out from a credit card account that you have with the bank. I forget the name of the bank even. But anyhow, all of those things are not included. And I had suggested a change in the check registers to include all that. And not only that, but where an expense is indicated, paid back to a staff member or to council members, indicate what it was for. There's no indication anywhere in the record what it was for. And the only way I can get it, and I did get it, by asking for a FOIA request. But I shouldn't have to do that. And of course, one last thing, and I'll mention, I said I talked to the treasurer after the meeting, but I was charged for 30 minutes of time for the last kind of FOIA request that I had made. And that was for $27.15, which meant it was like $54.30 an hour. And I said, that's bizarre. If I figured out what the annual salary was on that basis, it would come out to $105,000. Whose salary was I being charged? The treasurer said it was her salary. Well, her salary doesn't even come close to that. Not yet. Maybe it'll get there quicker.
Are you done?
I'm done.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you very much. Any other citizens' comments? All right. We have no executive session planned, so with that, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Appreciate yours. You're doing a nice job for us. Klaus? Which is the patrol? So he does both. No, he doesn't. No, he stays in the air conditioned office.
You guys do that, but they put the nice tan torso.
Well, youth is an amazing gift.
They do a good job. They do a great job. It's nice to meet you.